Hi, my name is Thomas, and I'm here today to share with you the lessons that I learned in my near-death experience. The 8 most important that I think people should know. So the first is that we are infinite beings, and we're just living a temporary physical existence. Uh, we are eternal beings. We're infinite, and we don't really die. In my near-death experience, it wasn't a white tunnel, but like this black mud that was filling in to a pinpoint of light. And then all of a sudden, three angels showed up for me. But I realized that death is just like a light switch being flipped, or a switch being flipped, and it doesn't hurt. The most painful part of the process is the emotions, because the emotions are 1,000 times what we feel here on Earth. So we are one collective consciousness as well. So we are one with the universe, and we can't really feel it here. It's I don't know if it's because of our culture, or it's just our society doesn't really appreciate those values. But on the other side, it's very much you feel at one with everything, with God, with God's love. Um, um, Even immaterial things, things that aren't alive. So, and then on the other side, time is not what you think it is. So number 2, time is not what you think it is. So, the past and the future are both moving at simultaneously. So the best way to change your future is to change your past. I don't mean you can go back to the past and time travel, but rather change how you experience the past, change how you remember the past, find silver linings and make it positive for yourself, and that will change the future. So, and everything is happening at once. So there's higher dimensions interacting with the third dimension and lower dimensions. So when you're on the other side, a second might feel like an eternity. You might only be gone during a near-death experience for a few minutes or even a few seconds, but it can feel like thousands of years. So that was the second thing I saw in my near-death experience. The third was I experienced Jesus' crucifixion. I was there for the crucifixion. It was more real than real. And I saw him on the cross. He was both on the cross and off the cross. And what I mean by that was I'm not sure if he was coming down off the cross or if he was being placed up, but he remained at an angle during my near-death experience for a long time. And I was behind him, and I remember him looking up over his shoulder at me. And the look on his face was of incredible pain, but more than that, he was surprised to see me there. And I've since realized that maybe he was seeing himself there, or because my name is Thomas, and that might be my spiritual journey. Thomas was Jesus' twin brother, and like Carl Jung mentioned, archetypes. We all live these archetypes, and our names are a big archetype. So I have the Thomas the Doubter side on me. But maybe he was seeing his brother, and he was wondering what he was doing there, or he was seeing me, and he was just shocked to see me there. But the pain in his eyes stood with me for months after my near-death experience. It was very traumatic for me. Like I experienced this pain as my pain. And the thing that I realized is that we are forgiven. And even after seeing Jesus on the cross and knowing that it was real, it took later in my near-death experience with God or an archangel, I'm not sure which, but I was on this beach with this bright orange lake, and there was an orange sunset, and this redheaded lady came to me because I was walking on the beach, and she startled me while I was walking along. And the one thing she told me was that I could do no wrong, that there was no right or wrong, just consequences. And when you look at that, you can kind of look at life that way. You can release the judgments. So we're constantly judging others, ourselves. We spend a lot of time on negative talk just because of judgments. And judgments can be good. In the past, they've kept us alive. But they're really kind of holding us back now. So if we can learn to not judge, and we realize that there is no right or wrong, just consequences, we can be free to live our lives without the emotional baggage that we carry around. And our self-talk goes from negative to positive. And that's talked a lot about in Adlerian psychology. Carl Jung mentioned it as well. So yeah, Jesus died on the cross for us and we're forgiven. There is no right or wrong. And another thing I learned is that it all washes out in the end. It's not God judging us or a council of higher beings. It's our higher self. So one of the things besides Jesus that I felt really bad about was that one of the angels I realized I had a relationship with, and it's been an eternal like twin flame, I guess. I didn't know that term before my near-death experience. I wasn't into the psychic new age movements. I was very much, I worked in medicine. I was very much scientifically, logically minded. And again, that Thomas the Doubter, even though I knew there was something bigger, I always doubted it. And it created this existential crisis that got so bad that eventually it led to a near-death experience. We are our own worst critics. We have nothing to fear unless we know that we've done something horribly wrong. And we're already forgiven. So you have to remember that. And if you can remember that in this life, then maybe in the next you won't judge yourself so harshly. Because again, God loves us, and we can't not be loved because we're one with God. So God is us, we are God. So how can we not be anything but loved? So the other thing was that I met Jesus in heaven. And that was the only time my guardian angel left my side. She said, I can't come in with you. They gave me a white robe because I felt bad about what I was wearing. And I remember feeling really bad about not having anything to give to God. Not that I wanted like a gift to give to him, but rather I felt like I hadn't used my gifts. And I felt like I'd been really gifted in this life with the intelligence to be able to sort all this existential, spiritual stuff out and to help others with it. But I was choosing to help people through medicine as best I could. But Western medicine just really doesn't, it helps people, but it really doesn't. It doesn't take into account the psyche or the spiritual side. So I met with Jesus alone in this big, it was like a cross between crystal and marble, and big tiles, thick on the floor and walls. There were no windows that I remember. A private room with just Jesus, and just Jesus and I. And I remember I was tearing at my robes and I was incredibly emotional. I was on the knees, on the floor. I remember the floor being really cool. And I was just pouring out tears and begging him to let me come back to this existence, to use my gifts and to not leave a mess. I didn't want to die like that. The circumstances weren't good. I felt bad for my mother. I wanted to end my story a better way. And being a cancer survivor and a stem cell transplant survivor, and I've had my hips replaced, and all my joints are bad and need replacement, and I've rejected my transplant, so I deal with a lot of health issues still. But I've been learning to overcome those health issues and to observe them and not attach emotion to them because of my near-death experience. So the next thing that I'd like you to know is that this isn't reality. This is like a dumbed-down version of it. The first analogy I could think of after my near-death experience, because there really aren't words for what happened. Again, because we communicate telepathically on the other side, you just hear thoughts, and you just know what the other person is trying to communicate. So words don't need to be spoken. And again, I wonder if I think we can communicate that way here on Earth, but because our society does not appreciate that, we don't. We think it's easier just to communicate with words and build with our hands and make money through hard work instead of trusting the universe to provide. So this isn't reality. The analogy I thought of was this is like an old 8-bit Nintendo game from the 80s or 90s. And this is like super HD, but like that analogy doesn't even work because it's so much more real. So again, and when it's real, it's that feeling of connectedness, and feelings of emotions, including sadness, empathy, peace, joy, love, are all felt 1,000 times stronger or more than we can feel here. So the next thing that I'd like to touch on too is number 5. Angels are real. Angels are very real. And in my experience, 3 angels showed up. It was a beautiful young woman with dark hair, olive complexion, brown eyes, young, maybe early 20s. But I instantly felt a connection to her. And even though I felt that connection to her, like I knew her, I still didn't want to go with her when they showed up. The other 2 angels, it was a young man with dark hair. He was wearing a white kind of like jumpsuit type outfit. And my angel was wearing this robe that was luminescent and white and flowing, and colors were shimmering off of it. And then there was a third angel, and he was an elderly man. I remember he had like this grumpy scowl on his face and deep wrinkly skin and dark gray curly hair. And those 2 never communicated with me. They were just off kind of in the background. I don't know if they were just like protection or what, but so 3 angels showed up for me, and I later learned that in Kabbalah, it teaches that every person has 3 guardian angels, and it depends on the date you were born, the time you were born, and some other things. So it can be family members that have crossed over. It can be, like in my case, a twin flame love connection. It can be maybe the higher self of someone who has been in your past and you haven't even thought of for years. Family members that have crossed over. So in my experience, I had this relationship with my angel. And the first thing I wanted to do, besides help humanity, because the first thing I saw when I agreed to go with her finally, and she convinced me that I could come back, she told me that, she told me I could come back. And so the next thing I knew, I was hovering over the earth, over the West Coast. And it was early in the morning, like 3 a.m., and I was watching the sunrise over the West Coast. I live in Oregon. I was up over Oregon, over the Rogue Valley, in space. But what I saw was all these souls, thousands of souls, like blue and white streaks, floating off, racing off, shooting off the earth. Some were shooting off, some were going really slowly. And I felt horrible. I felt really sad and deep compassion. Again, like I've never felt before for humanity. And I asked my angel, she was up to my left, and I asked her, I said, are these souls, are these people dying? And her answer to me was yes, they either have or they will. There's this ascension going on at this time, and kind of a collection of souls, so to speak. And it just made me feel really bad. I wanted to come back and help humanity and tell people what I had seen in my near-death experience, and teach people how to recreate a near-death experience without having to go through the trauma by using meditation or even psychedelics, if you're okay with that sort of thing. But it made me feel horrible. But also, after that, after I realized having this relationship with my angel and her getting real with me and showing me her real self, her luminescent garment changed all of a sudden to like a simple woven out of like wool, kind of like not a robe, but like a one-piece garment, and made on a hand loom. And it just made her very real to me, and I instantly just loved her more than I've ever loved anybody before. And she was so wise and so compassionate and so peaceful. And not to mention, she's just more beautiful than anyone I've ever seen. But so when I came back, I wanted to know how to get back to her, and I wanted to feel that love. I realized if I could feel her love, I would never need to have a relationship with a woman here on earth, because it just wouldn't fulfill me like it would with a spiritual partner. with an actual angel. And so my journey has been to learn how to get back to her through channeling, and again, before my near-death experience, I did not really believe in psychic abilities. I thought maybe a few people had that gift, but I didn't think it was something that everybody could do. So since then I've been, and intuitively I came across remote viewing and psychic channeling and sound healing and using sound frequencies to create an altered state through Himalayan singing bowls or quartz crystal singing bowls. And so, and through meditation. And so, and since then I've learned about the phenomenon of synchronicity that Carl Jung spoke of. And synchronicity is meaningful events that line up. It could be numbers. I've learned that there's things called angel numbers. It can be through tarot. And again, tarot is something that I completely disregarded even after my near-death experience for a long time, until I learned that Carl Jung studied the I Ching and the synchronicities that showed up in the I Ching. And the I Ching is basically tarot. And I believe he did study some tarot as well. And Carl Jung was a near-death experience survivor. Although his near-death experience was very different than mine. He didn't have angels and he didn't meet God. But it changed his life forever, and it changed psychology forever. So we can thank a lot of things to people who've had near-death experiences. So the next thing that I learned is that before I move on, I'd like to say through synchronicity, I know my angel is always with me. Through random poems that I'll come across, or music, or just things that line up in my life. Also, since I've been doing like the remote viewing and stuff, I get glimpses of her. I hear her voice and her thoughts. I share that because I would like people to know that even when they feel alone, they're never alone. And if they miss a loved one who's passed on, there's ways of learning to communicate with them. And you don't have to feel alone. So with that said, let's move on to number 6. So 6, I've kind of touched on already, is that we all have psychic or spiritual gifts. We're all powerful psychics. We all have intuition. You've heard of a mother's intuition, where maybe a kid's in trouble or sick or something happens and the mom instantly knows. Or the other way around, you know when your phone rings and you just know it's your mom. But we don't develop those gifts. A lot of us don't. Again, it could be culture, society, environment, parental influence. It could just be our personal beliefs too. And a lot of our experiences beat us down. Again, I'd like to suggest looking into Adlerian psychology. Adler was a psychologist that worked with Jung, but had a different view of how the world works and how psychology works. So if you're interested in learning those gifts, I would definitely encourage you to read about it as much as you can. But really, trust your intuition on what works for you and what you think is real, and not just some new agey, clicky type thing to get people to like their videos or to buy their products. And I've seen near-death experience survivors charging hundreds or thousands of dollars an hour to do psychic readings for people. And people should not be making money off this. So I'll get off my high horse and let's move on to number 7. So we judge ourselves, I've talked about this, we judge ourselves after crossing over before going to another existence. So we're here to learn something, and life is about learning and becoming godlike, or learning that we are God. So we are Jesus, Jesus is us, and God is us, and we are God. Or you can call it the universe, or in my experience, it is a sort of consciousness. So it's not just like the universe, unless you consider the universe as a consciousness, which it is. But when we're learning, there's different levels of existence that is available to us. From the earthworm view to where there's not much consciousness, to the earth view, where you live as the earth and you realize the earth is a living thing that has an intelligence, to an existence in heaven, or an angelic existence, or an existence in a higher plane. So some souls prefer more physical existence. They love making money the hard way, working with their hands. Others prefer more etheric life, a more comfortable life. Some people are here just to learn, so they go through immense suffering and pain and learn to overcome that and gain enlightenment. I really think this universe is very dualistic. It's dialectical, so it's like yin and yang. You can both experience pain and joy at the same time. Just because you're in pain or sick or misery doesn't mean that you're not okay. So it's just how you observe things. So number 8, the final one, is humanity is able to use gifts like remote viewing or channeling or listening to your intuition to attain knowledge otherwise unattainable. And again, there's nothing that has not already been thought of. So there's nothing new under the sun. So if we can go into those altered states and reach, like, whether it's the collective consciousness, or you call it the Akashic records, or God, we can use these gifts to bring back technology, to bring back philosophies, to bring back different ways of living, chemistry, archaeology, whatever you want to know. And I'm wondering why more remote viewers aren't working together to sort of raise the vibration of the world. But remote viewers and Kabbalists that have attained the highest levels of spirituality can exist in, whether you call it the astral plane, or again, the collective consciousness, or whatever. They can exist in those realms and affect this realm through the etheric realms, the higher dimensions. So anyway, I would encourage people to follow that path. So thank you for listening to my experience. And I want you to know that if you're still watching, you're definitely gifted with these gifts to talk to the other side, and to find enlightenment. In fact, if you're going through a spiritual or psychic awakening and you're having difficulty, please leave a question or comment below, and I'll try to get back to you on it. Because I have suffered deeply, and still I've learned that, like, my cancer was something I chose to have, and I'm so grateful for it, because it led to the near-death experience. And as traumatic as the near-death experience was, like being strapped down on a gurney and being out of my mind because my brain was shutting down, and I was having an adrenal crisis and all that. Even with all that negativity, there was still something so great that came out of it. So I would encourage people to learn dialectics and to learn to be okay with the pain. That way you don't suffer. So whether it's emotional, spiritual, or physical pain. So again, if you're having difficulty, please reach out. So thank you for listening. Again, much love and peace.